Episode 1, The Prophecy of Fire and Blood. Lesson: Greatness is forged in struggle. The night was unlike any other in the island's memory. Lightning ripped across the Hawaiian sky, painting the mountains in bursts of white fire. Thunder rolled over the waves, shaking the cliffs, and from the heart of Hualalai, molten lava spilled into the dark, churning sea. The priests gathered near the temple of Pu'ukahola whispered in terror and awe because prophecy had spoken. A child will be born beneath the storm, destined to unite all the islands. That child was Kamehameha, but to some this prophecy was not a blessing. It was a threat. Alapai, the ruling chief of Hawaii Island, feared the rise of another who could challenge him. In the flickering torchlight, he ordered a secret command: kill the child before dawn. Yet destiny, once set in motion, cannot be stopped. A trusted retainer, Naole, risked everything. He took the newborn from his mother's arms and fled into the wilderness. For days he climbed cliffs, crossed rivers, and hid in caves, hunted by warriors loyal to Alapai. The child's cries were muffled under kapa cloth, and the sound of hounds echoed through the jungle. Rain poured down, blurring footprints. By some miracle, or perhaps divine protection, they survived. The baby who should have died lived. The prophecy had begun. Hidden deep in the valleys of Kohala, Kamehameha was raised among farmers and fishermen. He grew strong, hauling nets, climbing rocks, and running barefoot across lava fields. He learned the rhythm of the ocean, the silence of the forest, and the harsh lessons of isolation. The villagers called him the Lonely One. He rarely smiled, but his eyes burned with quiet intensity. Even as a boy, there was something otherworldly about him, something both feared and respected. Years passed, and Alapai's reign ended. Kamehameha returned to his family, now a tall, powerful youth whose strength amazed even seasoned warriors. Stories spread across the islands, how he could lift the Naha stone, a massive boulder said to test the strength of chiefs. Many had tried and failed. Kamehameha stepped forward, muscles coiled like the sea before a storm, and lifted it from the ground. The onlookers gasped. The prophecy was no longer a whisper. It was alive. But Kamehameha's journey was far from easy. He faced envy from rival chiefs, betrayal within his own family, and endless tests of loyalty. The loneliness of his youth had carved into him a patience and self-control few possessed. When others acted out of anger, he observed. When they rushed to speak, he listened. His silence was not weakness, it was focus. He learned that the world would not hand him greatness. He would have to build it, stone by stone, through hardship and pain. Every betrayal made him wiser. Every wound taught him endurance. Every loss stripped away arrogance and replaced it with humility. When famine struck, he ate what his people ate. When storms destroyed crops, he worked alongside them to rebuild. His leadership began not from command, but from example. People followed him not out of fear, but out of faith. The prophecy that began in fire was taking shape in sweat and perseverance. The child once hidden in the jungle had become a man of purpose, a man who would not only survive his destiny, but rise to meet it. And through it all, one truth burned in his mind. Nothing worth having comes without struggle. Lesson 1. Greatness is forged in struggle. Every human life, no matter how grand or humble, carries its own storms. Some people curse the rain, others learn to dance in it. Kamehameha's early years remind us that pain is not punishment, it's preparation. The obstacles that seem designed to break us often build us instead. The betrayals, the delays, the isolation, they temper our spirit like steel in a forge. If Kamehameha had been born into comfort, he would never have developed the strength to lift his people. It was the hunger, the fear, and the uncertainty that gave him power. The same is true for us. We cannot become unshakable if we've never been shaken. We cannot inspire others to climb if we've never crawled. So when life corners you, when the world turns cold, and when you feel unseen, remember Kamehameha, the child who was meant to die but lived to unite a kingdom. Greatness doesn't always announce itself in gold and glory. Sometimes it begins in hiding, in struggle, in survival. And those who endure the darkness long enough eventually become the light. If you thought that was intense, wait until you hear how a single moment on the battlefield would turn this hidden prince into a living legend. Episode 2, The Battle of the Broken Spear. Lesson: Power must be guided by wisdom. The sound of war drums rolled across the valleys of Hawaii like thunder chasing the wind. Smoke curled from burning torches, carrying with it the smell of anticipation, fear, and destiny. Beneath the crimson glow of dawn, warriors tightened the bindings on their spears, painted their faces in streaks of red and black, and looked toward their leader, the man they now called Kamehameha I, the great Kamehameha. He stood silent, tall, and unshakable. The ocean wind whipped through his hair as he gazed toward the enemy line. His own cousin, Chief Keaweopala, a rival born from the same bloodline but driven by jealousy and pride. Their ancestors had shared feasts and prayers. Now their descendants would share only bloodshed. For years, Kamehameha had trained for this moment. The lonely boy who once hid in the shadows had become a strategist, a master of timing. He had studied his opponent's movements, the shape of the land, even the direction of the trade winds. He didn't believe in luck. He believed in readiness. When the conch shell sounded, the world erupted. Spears flew like arrows of fire, shields cracked under impact, and the chants of warriors thundered across the plains. Kamehameha fought at the front, not from behind a line of guards, but shoulder to shoulder with his men. His voice rose above the chaos, steady and commanding. Every strike he made carried purpose, not rage. Every movement was measured, deliberate. Then came the moment that would seal his legend. A warrior lunged toward him, spear aimed straight for his chest. In that heartbeat, time seemed to slow. The crowd gasped, and the weapon shattered against his armor. The spear broke, splintering into pieces that fell at his feet. Warriors who saw it believed the gods themselves had intervened. To them, Kamehameha was chosen. But Kamehameha knew the truth. Divine favor is useless without discipline. As the battle raged, he pressed forward, using both force and intelligence. His army surrounded Keaweopala's men, cutting off their retreat, pushing them toward the sea. It was a clean victory, not won by numbers, but by patience, by strategy, and by unflinching resolve. When the dust cleared, Keaweopala was captured. His generals urged Kamehameha to execute him and display his head as a warning, but Kamehameha refused. Instead, he looked upon his defeated cousin and said, "He is still of our blood. Let him live." This act of mercy stunned his men. No chief had ever shown kindness to a fallen rival. Yet Kamehameha understood something deeper than revenge, that cruelty, once unleashed, becomes a habit, and habits become fate. He ordered that the wounded be cared for, the captives fed, and the dead buried with dignity. When his soldiers asked why, he replied, "A chief who rules with blood dies in blood, but one who rules with respect rules forever." It was in that moment that Kamehameha became not just a conqueror, but a leader. The lesson he taught that day rippled far beyond the battlefield. Power, he realized, is a double-edged spear. Wield it without wisdom, and it pierces even the one who holds it. True power lies not in destroying your enemies, but in mastering yourself. The man who can win a battle through restraint will always outlive the one who wins through cruelty. Kamehameha's decision to spare his cousin was not a weakness. It was strength in its highest form. Mercy requires control, and control is the rarest kind of power there is. Years later, when foreign ships arrived on Hawaiian shores, their captains spoke of the great warrior who ruled with discipline, whose men followed him not out of fear, but devotion. They saw a king who could have ruled with terror and chose respect instead. Lesson 2. Power must be guided by wisdom. In life, everyone eventually gains power, and over a job, a family, a relationship, or even just over themselves. But power without guidance is a storm without direction. It may be loud and impressive, but it destroys everything in its path. Kamehameha's story teaches that true mastery lies not in how much power you have, but in how you use it. The calm mind is stronger than the clenched fist. The wise heart leads longer than the loud one. Wisdom is what keeps victory from turning into tyranny. So when life gives you influence, whether over one person or 1,000, remember this: lead with clarity, not ego. Listen more than you speak. Respect more than you command, because history does not remember those who ruled by fear. It remembers those who ruled with understanding. Kamehameha walked off that battlefield not just as a warrior, but as a man who had conquered himself. And if you thought that battle was fierce, wait until you see how he would face something far more powerful than any rival chief: the arrival of foreign empires and weapons of steel and fire. Episode 3, The Tide of Steel and Fire. Lesson: adapt or be defeated. The ocean horizon shimmered like polished glass, but beneath its calm surface, change was coming. Swift, unstoppable, and foreign. The year was 1778 when the first great ships appeared off the coast of Hawaii. Massive wooden beasts, taller than palm trees, gliding across the water with wings of white cloth. The people thought they were floating islands. The men aboard spoke strange tongues, their skin pale, their eyes blue as the sky. Their arrival marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would test not Kamehameha's strength, but his vision. Where others saw mystery and danger, Kamehameha saw opportunity. He watched the newcomers carefully, studied their movements, their tools, their weapons. Muskets that thundered like gods, cannons that could shatter cliffs, steel that never bent. These were not mere curiosities, they were the future. While rival chiefs mocked or feared the foreigners, Kamehameha invited them to talk, trade, and teach. He exchanged sandalwood fish and taro for rifles and gunpowder. He observed how they navigated by stars, how they forged alliances, and how they built ships that could travel farther than any canoe. The chiefs who refused to adapt clung to their traditions as if they could shield them from change. But the tide was rising. Kamehameha didn't abandon his culture, he strengthened it. He believed the spirit of Hawaii could coexist with the tools of the outside world. His warriors learned to blend ancient techniques with modern firepower. He even formed alliances with skilled sailors and gunners from abroad, using their expertise to build a fleet of his own. Under his leadership, the Hawaiian army transformed into a disciplined force unmatched in the Pacific. But with great change came great conflict. In 1795, the time came to prove whether his vision would triumph or fail. The last major rival, Chief Kalanikupule of Oahu, stood in his path. Kamehameha's fleet approached the island like a storm. Sails full, drums beating, warriors chanting prayers to the gods. The battle that followed would become legend. It was fought on the steep cliffs of Nuuanu Pali, where the mountains met the sea. Kamehameha's forces advanced uphill under cannon fire, step by step, through smoke and blood. His musketeers moved in formation. His traditional warriors fought beside them, combining ancient chants with the roar of gunpowder. The air was thick with dust and destiny. At the height of the clash, his enemies retreated to the cliff's edge. The wind howled like ghosts as Kamehameha's army pressed forward, pushing them back until hundreds fell from the precipice, plunging into the valley below. The land fell silent. The islands were his. But Kamehameha didn't celebrate the slaughter. He walked to the cliff, gazed down at the fallen, and whispered a prayer. For though he had won Hawaii by fire, he vowed to rule it by peace. That day, he understood the truth of change. Power gained by force must be sustained by wisdom. The guns and ships had given him victory, but it was his openness to learning, adapting, and evolving that had truly set him apart. Lesson 3. Adapt or be defeated. The world is never still. It moves, it shifts, it transforms, with or without your permission. Those who cling to the old ways for comfort are slowly buried by them. Kamehameha's genius wasn't just in conquest, it was in his ability to evolve without losing his identity. In every era, there comes a new tide of steel and fire, technology, innovation, change. Some run from it. The wise, like Kamehameha, learn to surf its wave. The tools of the future are not threats, they are invitations. To learn, to adapt, to stay alive. If you thought uniting the islands was Kamehameha's greatest challenge, wait until you see how he faced an even greater enemy: greed, ambition, and the empires that sought to devour his kingdom from across the sea. Episode 4, The King Who Said No. Lesson: protect what you build. The drums of war were silent now. Across the islands, the banners of Kamehameha flew proudly. He had achieved what no other chief in Hawaiian history had done. He had united all the islands under one rule, one law, one vision. For the first time, peace blanketed the Pacific paradise. But peace, as Kamehameha soon learned, can be more dangerous than war. Foreign ships now came not just to trade, but to claim. British officers sailed under flags of empire. American merchants sought control of resources. Russian explorers built forts without permission. Each came with smiles and gifts, and behind them contracts and cannons. Kamehameha welcomed them with grace, but never naivety. He met captains, interpreters, and missionaries with calm eyes and a firm voice. He listened, learned, and negotiated. But when they asked for land, he refused. The land, he said, is the chief's body. It belongs to the people, not to foreigners. He understood something few leaders of his time did. Once you give away land, you give away freedom. And freedom, once lost, never returns. He created laws that kept the islands strong and independent. No foreigner could own land outright. Trade was allowed, but under Hawaiian control. He strengthened agriculture, ensuring no one starved. He balanced tradition with progress, allowing the New World in only as far as it could serve his people, never to rule them. Even in peace, Kamehameha's leadership was tested. Rival chiefs whispered about foreign riches. Traders tried to bribe his ministers. Missionaries spoke of faiths that demanded submission to distant kings. But Kamehameha stood unyielding. He was polite, but immovable. His courage wasn't in wielding a weapon anymore. It was in saying no when the world said yes to temptation. He built forts and shipyards, not for conquest, but protection. He created systems of justice, declared that theft and oppression would be punished, and ensured that the wealth of the islands flowed back to its people. He understood that every empire falls, not when it is conquered, but when it forgets how to guard what it has earned. Lesson 4. Protect what you build. Success is fragile. What you achieve through discipline can be destroyed through neglect. It's easy to fight for something when it's not yet yours, but harder to defend it once you have it. Kamehameha reminds us that guarding your values, your home, and your legacy requires constant vigilance. In our own lives, this means setting boundaries, protecting your time, your relationships, your peace. The same way Kamehameha refused to let outsiders control his land, we must refuse to let fear, greed, or distraction control our minds. He understood that a kingdom can be invaded from outside, but it can also be eroded from within. That's why real power is not just about winning, it's about keeping. Kamehameha's no was not stubbornness, it was wisdom, because sometimes the most powerful word in the world is the one that saves everything you've built. And if you think holding on to power is hard, wait until you see how Kamehameha prepared his people to survive even after he was gone. Episode 5, The Legacy of the Lonely One. Lesson, True leadership outlives you. Legacy is built on purpose, not power. The sun sank behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the black lava cliffs of Kailua. The ocean stretched endlessly, waves breaking in rhythmic applause. The wind carried the scent of salt and flowers, and somewhere in the distance a canoe glided silently. Standing at the edge of the cliffs, Kamehameha gazed at the horizon, the weight of years pressing on his broad shoulders. He had been a warrior, a conqueror, a unifier. But now, in the final chapter of his life, he faced a far more profound challenge, ensuring that the kingdom he had fought so fiercely to build would survive beyond him. Every chief before him had left islands divided, power scattered, or wealth plundered. Kamehameha had done the impossible. He had united the Hawaiian Islands into a single kingdom. But he knew that conquest alone was not enough. The greatest battles were not fought on fields of lava or shores of sand. They were fought in the hearts and minds of those who would inherit the legacy. He gathered his advisors and family beneath the shade of coconut palms, teaching them not just strategy and governance, but the principles that had guided him: courage, fairness, foresight. He enacted the law of the splintered paddle, kanawai mamalaho, a radical protection for the vulnerable, declaring that fishermen, children, and travelers along the roadways must always be safe from harm. The law was inspired by a moment from his youth when he had chased fishermen along the shoreline, only to be trapped and nearly drowned. Rather than harbor resentment, he transformed the memory into justice. That singular act would echo through centuries, remembered as one of the earliest forms of human rights legislation in the Pacific. Kamehameha's foresight extended beyond law. He balanced foreign relations with Hawaii's sovereignty. British and American ships appeared frequently on his shores, their captains trading muskets, food, and knowledge. Missionaries offered education, religion, and influence. Yet Kamehameha never surrendered the essence of Hawaii. He allowed learning and innovation to flourish, but he protected his people from exploitation. He built trade systems, strengthened agriculture, and carefully monitored foreign ambitions, understanding that peace without preparation could crumble at a moment's notice. Even in the twilight of his life, he remained active, walking among his people, listening to their concerns, and offering guidance. He was a father to the islands, not only his children by blood, but to every man, woman, and child who lived under his rule. The same islands that had once hidden him as a child now flourished under his protection. From the fertile valleys of Hilo to the cliffs of Nuuanu, Kamehameha's presence was woven into the very land. When his health began to fail, he ensured that succession was secure. His advisors and heirs were chosen carefully, guided by merit and loyalty, not simply by birthright. The laws, alliances, and institutions he had created were designed to endure, to guide the next generation in his stead. Kamehameha understood the ultimate truth of leadership. Power is temporary, but purpose is eternal. A leader who rules for themselves may be forgotten. A leader who rules for the people is remembered forever. Lesson 5. True leadership outlives you. Kamehameha's life teaches that your legacy is not measured in battles won, wealth acquired, or fear inspired. It is measured in the systems you build, the people you empower, and the principles you uphold. Leadership is not about domination. It is about stewardship. Everything you create, protect, and nurture carries forward long after your voice has faded. This is the essence of immortality through action. In our own lives, the lesson is clear. Every decision we make, how we treat others, how we defend our values, how we build systems that empower people, contributes to the legacy we leave behind. True greatness does not end with us. It lives in the lives we touch, the culture we shape, and the wisdom we pass on. Kamehameha's vision transformed Hawaii not by conquest alone, but by teaching, protecting, and preparing. As the waves whispered against the shore, he closed his eyes for the last time, leaving behind a kingdom united, proud, and resilient. The islands would forever echo his name, Kamehameha the Great. His story reminds us that even the fiercest warrior, the most brilliant strategist, and the most formidable king must measure success not by what is gained, but by what endures. If you find this video adding value to your life in any way, please take a moment and subscribe and like, and if you want to go further, write one word: value. Because it helps with the algorithm so other people who need this story can find it. It's free and a way to give back to me. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you.